Hello, this is Juan Torres. I'm here in my house. I work at Catholic Charities, and I was invited to kind of check in with you guys and share some of the cool things that my family is doing to prepare for a disaster. Okay. So one of the cool things that we decided to do in our house, we had a go bag, and we're a family of four. We have two kids, a 8 years old, 8 and 6. My wife had to remind me they just had their birthdays. But the bags were too small for our family. So, and we kept taking things out. So we decided to actually make a preparedness box. And the box kind of evolved into two boxes, one for clothing and warm items, and one with things that we would need, including emergency bags, some water filters, some food, and some cleaning supplies in case of a disaster. So as a young family with two young kids, we found out that those preparedness bars that you usually get in a preparedness kit, it just didn't work for our family. We opened it up just, in our conversations, and the kids were like, ew, that's disgusting. So we were like, okay, we need to get something that in an emergency the kids will actually eat. So, we picked out a cereal that is low on sugar and the kids love. So the little balls looked like little soccer balls. So it was a hit, and the little cartoons. And then we experimented a little bit with the different kinds of milk that doesn't need to be refrigerated. And we found that this is the best one for our family. And in case we evacuate our home and we're pulled off on the side of the road, we can pull out the cereal and have some milk. And something that we didn't do the first time when we added this to our kit, we forgot the bowls and the spoons. So now we have the bowls and the spoons. So just a quick little tip from our family with two young kids. All right, you guys. So a lot of families have kind of an expanded kind of emergency preparedness station, often in their garages. For us, a space was an issue. Having, spending extra money to have this kind of extra stash of food that possibly would go bad, and if we really did want to keep it for a long time, it had to be a certain type of food that our family probably wouldn't eat. So what we decided as a family is to kind of focus more on keeping our pantry as full as possible with a few items that don't necessarily need electricity and we could easily kind of prepare. So kind of having a conversation with the kids, in particular, tuna and kind of canned chicken was one of those things that they would be okay, just getting it out, and maybe throwing some canned corn, kettle corn, and mixing it up a little bit. They love it. And then we also kind of picked up some of these canned soup that doesn't need to be cooked or anything. It's already prepared and you can just eat it cold. So this is kind of a little bit of a strategy that our family picked. All right. So, as we get closer to when they start shutting off the power, we kind of had to transition similar to how we kind of, changed our clothing. The strategies around the house, we kind of had to update. And one of the things that we learned from the last fire season was to kind of be conscious of what we put in the refrigerator and freezer. And kind of a trick from old time campers is to take some water bottles and maybe even jugs of water. And if you don't even have to buy them, you can just use your jugs of milk and fill them up with water. Put them in the freezer, and when the power does go out, you can just transfer those blocks of ice in those jugs and put them in the refrigerator section, and it extends the life of that food a little bit longer. Our stove is also electric, so if they cut off the electricity, we won't be able to prepare any meals. We like camping, so we're lucky enough that we have a outdoor kind of camping stove, and we have plenty of propane. So in worst case scenario, we could do a little bit of cooking outside. and use up those items in the refrigerator as soon as possible so that, you know, they don't go bad, and we consume them. So our family kind of sat down and prepared a little family plan. I was lucky enough to, at work, we kind of did this exercise and we had some discussions. And then, you know, it's like, that makes a lot of sense. So we came home and, you know, after dinner, we started having a little discussion. And in particular, for us, it was really important to have this family discussion as in case of a disaster. Like the worst case scenario would be that it would be in the middle of the day when both my wife and I are at work. My wife is a Spanish teacher at LC Allen High School. So she's kind of responsible for those kids in her classroom. And then as an employee at Catholic Charities, I kind of have to make sure that things are okay before I can escape and pick up more kids. So this family plan is really essential. And for us, you know, there were multiple moving parts, and if we're both at work and we can't pick up the kids, who's going to pick up the kids? So then we called grandma and grandpa, who live relatively close to us, and they both often pick up the kids, and they're in the emergency contact at our kids' school. We sat down, we decided that in case of a disaster and we are not able to come back home, we would meet at the parking lot at the Veterans Building. The Veterans Building, it's a large parking lot. There's no hanging wires, and often in disasters, that's where a lot of the emergency crews gonna set up. And for us, it felt like that was the safest place. Once we connected as a family, we would be able to kind of decide what's the best situation, what's the best place for us to go out of town or try and come back home. But as a family, we're going to meet at the Veterans Building parking lot. So continuing the conversation around the household plan, something that we realized as we were invited to have this conversation was that this little kind of, these few sheets of paper, they get lost really easily. You know, we had it in a go bag, the original go bag that we had, and then we kind of placed it in this box, but every once in a while we kind of take things out. So we realized that we need to make multiple copies of this document to keep in my car, in my wife's car, and then possibly even more important to make sure that grandma and grandpa, who might be the ones that need to pick up our kids, have all these emergency contact information, where our meeting place, because you know we forget, things come up, and it's good to have them in a piece of paper, or we can refer back to it, and anything that we might need, it's in that you know, in that document, and it doesn't, if it gets lost, there's multiple other copies.